Hello and welcome, Taylor, member of the Coopers in Louisville. I did it right this time. I'm so glad you were willing to join the show. Big game Thursday night, of course, with PRFC in Louisville, headed to the USL Cup, and it's going to be a great game. So thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
As we were talking a little bit earlier, the West Coast and the East Coast just doesn't have a lot of overlap between each other. Which I think is a shame with the USL, and there's a lot of talk on our side, at least, of trying to do more cross-pollination throughout through the season. Is it about the same for the East Coasters? They just, they're involved with their side and don't bother much with the West.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm one of the few people that probably watches very many West Coast games, and even then, I've probably seen maybe 5 or 6 all season. I mean, the joke around most Louisville City fans and most Eastern Conference fans is they just call the West the simulation. It's not something that actually exists. It's just it's a computer save on fantasy, on FIFA or something, and whoever happens to pop out of it is who we play at the end of the year.
That's funny. You know what? That's kind of fair. I can't argue with that. I actually kind of like that. So how long have you been a footy fan? How long have you been following Louisville? And tell us a little bit about the Coopers.
I've been following soccer since, I had 3 kids. My second son was born in 2012. It was one of those that didn't sleep through the night. And at that point, the only thing that was on TV in the middle of the night was Champions League replays. And I followed the national team, and I had friends in high school that played soccer. I didn't play it much. So I knew about the game, but I really, really got into it then. I read a whole bunch of books, and that was fall of 2012. And by spring of 2013, I'd started having a lot of discussions on Reddit or Facebook or whatever about why can't we bring some kind of atmosphere or something like that to Louisville. And then back in September of that year, 4 other guys and I got together and we founded the Coopers. We got together with the guy who would ultimately be one of the founding owners of Louisville City, and said, here's what we can do for you. If you can bring professional soccer to us, we'll work as hard as we can to get the word out there among the folks who will hopefully ultimately be your season ticket buyers. Mm-hmm. And fast forward 5 years, and here we are. We've won a USL title already. We've been to the Eastern Conference Finals 4 years in a row, won twice in a row. We're doing, if Cincinnati didn't exist, we'd be a great attendance success story. But that being said, we're really pleased with how things go for us. And it's been a great ride. It's exceeded all of my expectations that I ever had starting out. And it's been a great time.
That's a fantastic story, actually. And there is a lot of respect from our side of the country of what Louisville has done, unlike FC Cincinatti, who we just all collectively like to hate. And we'll get to that later, I think. So, the club is great. You've got some great key players. We'll address that in a minute. One of the things that we were worried about was the pitch. Now, we know that the game's been moved to Lynn Stadium. How do you guys see things going for your stadium in the future? Are you going to use Lynn Stadium more, or are you going to be able to get a dedicated pitch? How is that going to work?
We'll have one more year at Slugger Field, the baseball stadium. And then in spring of 2020, our own new stadium will open. It's going to seat 10,000, 12,000 people, I think. We broke ground on it earlier this year. It's a public-private partnership between Louisville Metro, which is the city and county merged together government, and the ownership group. I think financing has finally gone all the way through, and so they've been working on it and doing groundwork and things like that for the last several months. And we're super excited to have a building of our own that we control and get the concessions on, and gonna have an actual soccer field in. And that's going to be a huge thing for our club. It's basically the thing that's going to make our club sustainable in the future. Slugger's been a great home for us. It is a terrible place to play soccer. There's no denying or beating around that bush, but it's great from a fan experience. I mean, it's a really nice minor league baseball stadium. It's in the middle of downtown. The amenities are really good. It's a great stadium for baseball, but to play on, it's very tight for soccer. There's one corner that you're basically up against the outfield wall trying to, hit a corner kick. Wow. Sightlines in the outfield spots are good in some places, bad in others. But we made the best of a not so great situation, and I think that being able to do it the way we have done it has made it so that we could be around for as long as we had, and has really helped us to finally get the ball rolling for getting our own stadium in 2020.
No, that's fantastic. And I remember seeing an article about the breaking of the ground out there, which I think is great news. I should have checked before, but I didn't. How many average fans do you have showing up to a game usually?
We have around 8,000, some between 7 and 8,000.
That's great.
And for a normal regular season game, 8,000 or 8,800 is a sellout. But they open up all the seats in the stadium for playoff games. So we had 10,000 for the Eastern Conference Final. Last year at the USL Cup Final, we had about 14,500. But 80, we hover around 7,000, I think, generally during the regular season. And I think that's probably going to improve coming into next year.
That is great. Are there any hopes or aspirations for an MLS spot with Louisville, or do they feel happy being in the USL?
I mean, it's not off the table, but I think that what they really want to do is make sure they've got their feet under themselves first, make sure the stadium exists, make sure the academy is up and running, and we're doing good things with that, which hasn't – I don't think it's even really started yet. I'm sure there are plans, but nothing has been formally announced with that whatsoever. There's some owners that think that that's the end goal, but we have 40 some odd owners or something. Our ownership group is very diverse. But the company line has been, look, right now we're trying to be the best club we can be. We're trying to become sustainable. If at some point in the future MLS makes sense for the owners and for the club, then that's great. But if I'm not in the company, so if I'm being honest with you, we have a great fan culture here, and it's only getting better. We have a great team. We have a great front office, and we're going to have a great stadium. But what we don't have is an ownership group that can throw down $150 million, $200 million price tag. I'm fairly certain they don't have that. So that's going to have to be something that changes if they ever really want to do that. But most of the fans of our club don't care. Like, would we like to be MLS? Sure. But I don't think it makes a difference to the average fan that walks in the gates. I mean, there are folks that will say that the quality is different or better or worse or whatever it happens to be. But I have been following this team from the moment they first kicked the ball, and I couldn't tell you that I would enjoy it any more if they were in a league higher or lower.
We feel kind of the same way in Phoenix, and a lot of the West Coast teams do feel that way. I mean, we've got a strong bid for the MLS right now, and certainly it would not hurt. There's a lot of benefits for being in the MLS. But our ownership, I did an interview with a couple of our owners. We have 12 owners in total. I had an interview 2 weeks ago or a week ago with two of our main owners, and Brett Johnson and Berke Bouquet. And they aren't in any rush. We are going to do our best to put Phoenix Rising into the MLS, but if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen, and we're very happy where we are. We've got stadium plans that hopefully are going to be announced in December. We've seen multiple options for that, and would seat about 21,000 people.
Do they have a site locked down yet?
No, and
that's the most important part.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of different options, and they're looking at their options. Some is like retrofitting a stadium that already exists, building our own stadium. And they're being so tight-lipped. I tried so hard to get some information out of them. Yeah, it's not.
You don't want. We had the same issue. We didn't know until really close to when the announcement happened where the site was going to be, and I can appreciate why. It's because you don't want basically land speculators to come and all of a sudden buy up all the leases or buy up all the land around you, and all of a sudden make them that much more expensive. So I can appreciate the need for secrecy there.
Yep. And then we're okay with it because we're just focused on, Thursday and getting through that, and then seeing what our club's going to do with our players on the off season. So we got a lot of other stuff to think about. Tell me a little bit about the Coopers, because we don't know anything about them. I don't even know if there's a second supporter group for Louisville. We have two with Phoenix Rising, the Red Fury and the Banditos. They're very loud, very proud, and we should have a fairly decent showing at the game on Thursday. How many members do you have in Coopers? What kind of stuff do you guys do?
Gosh, at one point we had well over 1,000. I think we've got. I honestly couldn't tell you how many paid members we've got these days. I know that I think it's north of 500 members that pay dues. But as far as number of supporters groups, I mean, gosh, we've got actually a lot. Some of them are support groups of one or two. But they've got a following. Like it's characters. It's really great.
People's Judean front.
It kind of is, but it's meant in that same lighthearted vein. But between we're the largest, we're the oldest. There's another one that sits in the other end of our stadium called Scouse's House. It's run by a guy from Liverpool. His name's Scouse Bromelo. great guy, and they kind of just started up last season and have really built a lot of momentum. I don't think they charge dues, but it's kind of like a come and sit in our end and yell at the goalkeeper for 90 minutes type of deal. And then, like I said, the rest of them are generally, there's a few, but I think that we call them micro supporters groups. So most of those have died out. There's still 3 or 4 that are still rolling around. And I like it because I think it just brings a different flavor to the game. One thing that our city kind of prides itself on is being able to have a lot of individual expression and things like that. And we don't want to tamp any of that down because it makes the atmosphere of game day that much more entertaining. So we're all about that.
Oh, that's great. And I totally agree. Our supporters groups have done a lot to work together, and it's really paid off in spades. I mean, I don't know if you saw any of the film from the Orange County game, but we were louder than anyone at stadium by a long shot. It was ridiculous. So let's skip forward to Thursday. It's going to be a big day. I think, like me, you've probably just started looking at Phoenix Rising, and in any detail maybe over the past week or two as things started to shape up. I'll ask you first of all what you think about Rising, where you think Louisville might be challenged, where you think we're going to be challenged.
I've had just a cursory look at the roster, and they look like some pretty solid guys. Like obviously you have Drogba on there, but Chris Cortez is a name that we know. Colin Fernandez is a guy. He played for Louisville City a few years ago as a loanee from Chicago Fire, so we're familiar with him. Solomon Asante, we obviously know. There's another name. Oh, Justin Johnson.
Jason Johnson.
Jason Johnson. Sorry, I knew him mainly because of one of those killer goals he had early on in the season. But he's a name that's popped up a few times. So the attacking pieces we're fairly familiar with, or at least I am. But the question mark that I had was really, I don't know any of the guys on your back line, and from what I've gathered, it's kind of been a feast or famine type season for those guys, where a lot of clean sheets, which is great, but then you'll have goals where you give up 3 goals in a game.
Yep.
So it's it's kind of hard to know what to expect there. And the thing that really stuck out to me because I started looking at some statistics from the playoffs, is how little y'all have the ball. Or at least seemed like not very many passes per 90. Like you average 100 passes less per 90 minutes than we do, and we are a possession-oriented team. But even then, against New York last week, we only had 278 attempts in the game, and yet our passes per 90 in the playoffs are still at around 400 or something like that. Your all's numbers are way less, and you guys haven't possessed much of the ball in the playoffs, which is another kind of surprising thing to me. Now, granted, I know Orange County is a possession-oriented team. Aiden Quinn was a Louisville City starter for 3 seasons, so we're very familiar with him and the kind of offense that he thrives in. And so that made and a Volson to boot. So we're familiar with that style of possession. But I was just surprised by how little. 35% is like nothing. I don't know how in the world. So it made me think: is this a defend and counter type team? If it is, then that's interesting. I don't know.
Well, no, it's a great insight from you. And even we as fans were really surprised at the amount of possession that OC had on Saturday. We still don't know if that was by design or if that's just the way it worked out. What I do know is that we adjust very well depending on how the other team is reacting. And one of the things that when we got that goal in the first minute and 20 some odd seconds, the frustration from Orange County, because they dislike us so much, was just palpable. And we took advantage of that. We just let them sit there and play ping pong with each other and do what they wanted to do. And every time they would come in, and we had a lot of block passes, it just frustrated them more and more. Now, I'm not saying that that's how I want games to go, right? But it seemed to work. And Rick Shantz, our coach, has a good way of adjusting sometimes for that. Normally, our possession is much higher than that. We'll at least split 50-50 with another team. The game before with Swope Park, again, possession was a little bit lower than normal. What we have done is we've been playing some great counter football, and we've got the speed to do it, and we have lots of fast options. I mean, you've got Solomon Asante. JJ, of course, is extremely fast. We can bring in a Billy Forbes. We've got a lot of speed burners that we can bring out there and just counter with really quickly. And then we've got a great midfielder in Kevin Lambert, who he just knows how to orchestrate a team, and he knows how to really control what's going on out there. And of course, we've got DDA out there, swinging his arms around and telling people what to do too. So I would expect to see more possession from us on Thursday, just because the statistics we've had in the past two games are anomalies more than normal. But I do think that given the fact that it might be raining, it might have an effect on our game plan. We don't play a lot in the rain. The rain doesn't affect us when we have it in the desert, because usually when we have it, it's a deluge, right? But let me see. Bear with me. Sorry about that. So we'll see what happens on Thursday. What I do see from you all, of course, are two very, very strong attackers. First of all, we've got your midfielder, and his name, because my son just called me, popped out of my head. Obman?
Well, we've got two or three really. I mean, Paolo Del Piccolo is playing a number 6 for us these days. And then playing next to him is now McCabe or Speedy Williams, depending on who you want to look at. Ownby is what you're thinking of. Brian Ownby. Yeah. Right. He barely played early on in the season and just kind of slowly worked his way back into the lineup. He was huge for us last year, but had a real bad injury during preseason and didn't even play for. I don't think he played at all in March. If he might have some spot starts in April, but this playoffs he's come on and given us. We've been a pretty solid team for the last 8 weeks or so, but I mean his gradual reintroduction to the lineup has made him, unstoppable almost.
He's been in form, man, and to us we've seen Cameron Lancaster cool down a little bit, and then he got injured in the last game against Red Bulls, and it seems like Brian has just kind of stepped up and tried to, fill the hole that maybe Cameron was leaving at that point. But that's the sign of a good team, right? You've got players who step up, because not everybody's going to be in form at the same time.
Well, and something I do want to point out, we didn't do it this year, but last season when we won the title, every outfield player on our team had scored at some point in that season. So we're a team that Cam has obviously been fantastic for us this year, and we probably wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for him. 25 goals is no joke. He had a couple of hat tricks, several braces. And we definitely needed him to get to where we are. But this is a team that anybody in the field can score, and has all season. I mean, Ilya Illich is having a breakout year after having been with the club for 4 years since its inception. Now McCabe is playing a new role, but it puts him in space to be dangerous from a little bit from distance. Ownby's playing great. George Davis is a veteran. He's got 50 goals with us, I think now. Over his tenure, maybe I'm overestimating that. Maybe it's just 50 USL goals. But in any event, there's been a good scorer for us, very consistent, savvy, veteran player. Luke Spencer came in and filled in for Cam after he went out early in the match last week, and he was our leading goal scorer last year. So we hope that Cam can play because he deserves to play, and he's obviously USL best 11 and my vote for MVP. Just because of some of the amazing things he's done statistically this season. But if he doesn't play, I've got no worry whatsoever about Luke Spencer being the one who fills the shoes.
See now, and you just answered about 3 of my questions in that, so well done. The thing that's great about this game is that we do have 2 lineups going head-to-head that are very strong. You guys can score from anywhere pretty much. We have the same thing. If we've got Kevin Lambert out there, he's scoring. Chris Cortez, everybody thinks Chris just positions himself in the box and heads the ball in. Well, that's not true. He had, I think it was 8 goals outside of the box, 2 of them from 30 meters out. When he can hit the ball,
he's the type of dude that's hard to track.
He is, and it's not like he's a fast player either. He just is smart in his positioning, and if you let him out of your sight for a second, man, it can be trouble. Of course, we have Drogba, who's going to be adding into that whole thing. It's just the bottom line is it's going to be a battle on the pitch, and I think it's going to be a game we're all going to really enjoy. We can only hope that things turn out well weather-wise. I don't mind a little bit of rain, but I don't want it to be huge.
It's supposed to be, frankly, awful. I was looking at the forecast earlier today, and I saw 55 and rainy during the day, but by the time the sun goes down, it's supposed to be like 38 and rainy. So it's going to be pretty bad. I'm bringing 2 of my kids out there and going with my dad. We've all been season ticket holders since the team started, so we're all going to go. But it's supposed to be like I'm already trying to figure out how I'm going to gear myself up to sit through that. But the good news is we started talking about stadiums and we kind of glossed over Lynn. Where we're playing this match is obviously not our usual home field. It's at Lynn Stadium, which is where University of Louisville men's soccer and women's soccer plays on their campus, which is a few miles outside of downtown. It's a great, the field is fantastic. It's a great surface to play on. So I know that was a concern for, I'm sure, USL and ESPN, given the comments that we got about the final last year. But they're also bringing in bleachers and trying to figure more seating because it only holds 5,300 people, if that, for their matches. So they're trying to bring in enough to where I think they're going to try and put in 7,000 or 8,000. But it's a great place to watch soccer if you're going to be there in person, and it'll be a pretty good show on TV.
It's going to be a great time. I do like the stadium. I like the fact it's going to hold so many people. We're going to have a smaller contingency than we did last week, obviously, but we've got a pretty good showing coming from Phoenix Rising fans. So we're looking forward to it. I do not look forward to being cold and wet. We are desert dwellers, and that just is completely no bueno. So that's going to be a challenge. And it'll be interesting to see if it's a challenge for the team. As if you probably heard my doorbell in the background, this is come on in, Edward.
Hey, how's it going?
This is my co-host on my show, Edward Cunningham. This is Taylor. He's with the Coopers with Louisville.
Nice to meet you, Taylor.
Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. I didn't know this is going on right now.
He's such a pain, man.
Yeah, that's what I do on the show all the time. I just show up and say something stupid and run the whole thing.
That's all good. Okay.
To the Costello to your Abbott, right?
Yeah, pretty much. He's fantastic. He just comes up. He had so much to the show. It would be boring if it was just me. So let's do this. We're at 23 minutes. Final thoughts on this game from you. If you want to make a prediction, I'm not a huge fan of predictions, but if you've got one, I'd love to hear it. And
I'm too scared to do it. I'll do this. I feel really good about how we're playing right now. I've got a lot of confidence in our guys. You guys probably don't know about this. The head coach for Louisville City up until June of this year was James O'Connor. And it was his first ever professional job, but he's licensed with UEFA and US Soccer, the highest licenses you can get. But he was a great professional player, played in England, played for Orlando City before they went up to MLS. Came to us. We were his first ever job. He builds the roster all by himself, ground up. He runs the entire technical side of the thing. Wow. Takes us to 3 straight conference finals. We finally get through the hump last year, wins the USL Cup. We had the best record in USL over that 3-year period going into the 4th year. And then in the middle of this season, as rumors had been floating around, we thought this was probably going to be the last year he'd be here anyway. We didn't think he was going to go to Orlando City in the middle of the season.
Yeah, that had been devastating. I mean, that news even reached us. I mean, it was crazy.
Well, and we, at that point, I was like, okay, this is the reason that we've had the success that we've had, or a huge, if not the reason, a very large reason. And so at that point, we'd started struggling a little bit on the field anyway. It was a very small roster. We only had 20 guys on the roster at the time, 2 of whom were injured. So we'd had to dress our both goalkeepers every game just to have a full bench.
You got to be kidding me.
I'm not. That's God's honest truth. If you only had 3 subs, we only had 3 guys we could sub. So at that point, I and a lot of other people thought, okay, we're doing fine. If we make the playoffs, that's great. But I've got no longer have aspirations to win the regular season or to win or to make the conference final or make the cup. That was a pipe dream. And so then instead of naming an interim coach, the front office announces that they're going to name 3 of the players as player coaches. 3, not 1, but 3.
Yeah, I thought we had a lot.
And I'm just like, okay, this might work for a couple of weeks, but it's not going to last any longer than that. The wheels are going to fall off. And then they didn't. They coached 4 games or 6 games, won 4, lost 1, drew 1. and got us through. And we had an Open Cup game with Chicago Fire in the middle there where we got our brake speed off. But that was a US Open Cup semifinal. I mean, that was a pretty big deal. We got that far in that competition, so that was huge for us. But at that point, our expectations for doing anything spectacular were gone. And they ended up coaching for, I think, like I said, 6 games, and did a lot better than they had any right to do. And then we hired John Hackworth, who a lot of people were a little bit skeptical about, but he obviously has a great pedigree. And we can't be anything but pleased with how things have gone with him. But there was some skepticism. We got off to an okay start and then lost to Toronto and had a bad draw up at Pittsburgh, a game we should have won, lost in the last literally minute and a half of the game. And so there was some skepticism there. And then we've won 9 games in a row, and most of them haven't been that close. And we saved, frankly, our best soccer for the entire season for the playoffs. So I feel really, really good about where Louisville City is. Now, that being said, I don't want to take anything away from Phoenix Rising. I mean, you guys have had a great season. You're having a really strong run this playoffs. A lot of your guys are peaking at the right time. So, like I said, I'm optimistic about what our chances are. I think it'll be a game that the midfield is going to be super important in, and you guys sound like you have a great midfielder. I know I've got nothing but great things to say about Paolo Del Piccolo and now McCabe and Speedy Williams. Those 3 guys, depending on who gets in there, have given me nothing to fear necessarily. But I agree. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think because it depends. Hackworth's style is a lot more pragmatic than O'Connor's was, in that James O'Connor we were going to play one way, and that was the only way we were going to play. And if it worked, great. If it didn't, we lost, which we didn't lose very often. So we generally didn't have much to complain about. But I think Hackworth is a little bit more pragmatic in the way he wants to approach every match. And depending on whatever it has to be, if it's ugly soccer, great. If that's what wins us the game, then that's what we're going to play. And we don't see a whole lot of that. There's been a couple of occasions where we've played a lot more defend and counter than I've ever seen us play before, but we won. And so I think this is a game that we're going to want to try and take control, and it's on our home field, or at a home field anyway, at a pitch we've never lost at, to be fair. And but I think I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great game.
Well, it's 2 teams that are worthy of the Cup final. I think on both sides. You guys have been through a lot. We've watched the manager changes going on. And, that's hard to overcome. We had one ourselves, but one's nothing compared to, 3, I guess, total for you all. It's going to be a hard-fought battle. The matchups are going to be gritty, and I know our team knows that they're going to be gritty. We see a little bit of concern because it seemed to be a really physical game against Red Bulls.
That's the way they play. I mean, we just have to match it. That's the only that game was a dogfight, an absolute dogfight.
Yeah, it really.
We don't necessarily like to play that way, and there was a time early on in our history where that just knocked us out of our game, and we just wilt. But we've played enough games against, frankly, New York probably gets a lot of credit for that, but also playing a Bob Lilly type team, also really physical. Charleston Battery is a pretty physical team, so it's just you have to play that way to win in our conference, and I'm sure there are teams like that in the West too. I don't know who they are, but I'm sure.
Las Vegas, Fresno. We've got teams that get very, very gritty.
But every game against New York is with us is always like that. It's an absolute rock fight, and that last Friday night was no different.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, there's no sure winner in this thing. It's going to be a dogfight. Can't wait to see what the result is. I think it's nice that we are not facing Cincinnati. I mean, we can both just revel in our hatred for Cincinnati.
Nothing makes me happier to be in this position than them not. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and we do have respect for the team, and it's better to come in, and you want your team to win, and so you're going to always push for your team. But it's not like with OC where things just got ugly pretty quick. And honestly, a lot of it instigated by OC. I'm not saying that because I'm a Phoenix guy, but there were just some really dumb things going on from that side that just didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
But either way, now I got to wear all my thick clothing that's weatherproof because I'm going to freeze to death in the stands. We'll survive that. And I'll pop by the supporter section. Which end of the field are you guys on?
The Coopers will be in the end. The president Tom likes to call it the trapezoid end. So that's where they'll be, with the drums and the smoke and all that. My seats are actually going to be on the other side just for reasons. I don't have a very good one, but that's where I'm sitting. But yeah, all the fun is going to be had on both ends for sure. So you really couldn't miss by going either place.
Super. Well, I appreciate your time, the perspective. I'm really looking forward to Thursday, and we'll just see what happens. Good luck to both teams. Yeah.
Likewise.
All right. Thanks again, Taylor. Have a great night.
Same to you, Kevin. Thanks.